The next speaker, that is excellent. The next speaker is going to talk about the sovereign Web3 contributor, navigating alignment, incentives, and getting shit done. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Feems.
Testing. Okay, awesome. Hi. So I'm talking about my favorite topic, which is contribution in Web3. I got into Web3 about 2 years ago, and the status that I was in was more, not fun employed, but like looking towards getting much more sovereignty in my professional direction. So I had kind of explored freelance work. And working as a freelancer from a 9 to 5 was daunting, but I also had the opportunity to learn what that really meant. How do I take control of the projects that I want to work on? How do I really rely on myself for the things that I do? And what sort of impact does that have? And so I was able to use that experience really when I entered the DAO space. But what I found, and what was kind of propelled this conversation, was, I think that I go like this, the why. I have many people who are really interested in contributing to Web3, or maybe those that have had experiences that maybe weren't so great. In this particular environment, we do have kind of, not a need, a dependency on onboarding. People don't really know where to go and how they fit in. They want to add value, but they may come to a Discord and say like, hey, I just want to help. And then also, being interested in working in the Web3 ecosystem, there are a couple of things that you would actually need to do. And so for many of them, we are in this decentralized kind of ecosystem where for the first time you enter a space in which you really kind of choose your own adventure. And so for us to kind of understand how the evolution of contribution has landed us, I think I'd like to take us a little bit step back. So contribution, like digitally, has evolved from Web 1 to Web 3. And so with Web 1, it was primarily those that people wanted to consume information or had like niche groups in which they would really be more transactional. So they post things, they would find things like that. And then Web 2, they were much more like actively engaged. And that's where we started like the real growth of digital communities and blogging and content creation. But what we also saw, though, too, is that content creators were really feeding the machine. And it was the machine, which are these social platforms, that were benefiting from the contribution. So what I found was interesting in terms of Web 3 was this idea of ownership also through collaboration. And I think that being an active participant was one thing that we could easily kind of transcend to, but this idea that you were also a stakeholder, that you had a choice or decision-making opportunity to really decide the direction of your community. And for that was new, and that was interesting, and that was also very exciting. But when we talk about the idea of sovereignty, yes, you can enter a Discord, you can participate any way that you can, but the value that you accrue and give to your community might not be from what you're expecting. Maybe it's the community that you've actually been in isn't one that is the greatest fit. So I wanted to kind of shift this idea of like, what does it actually mean to be a sovereign contributor? So then it comes down to this idea of like self-custodialship. We all heard this idea of like, not your keys, not your cone slogan. But we need one for contribution. When we look at, in terms of DeFi, like self-custody. So it's like, all right, I understand that I need to take ownership of my assets. But like, what about ownership of you and your type of activity? We don't really have that narrative in Web3 contribution. And so that's something that we do need, because the narrative that we do have when it comes to Web3 contribution is the idea of community and collectiveness. And these are all synergies that are dependent in like coordination. And these are all synergies that are dependent on a healthy culture of an organization. But when it comes to you feeling a part and adding value to your contribution to your organization or DAO, using this example, it might not have kind of the reciprocal benefit that you expect or others as well. And so what we really do need is to have this kind of conversation as to, we're glad you're here, but how do I add value and how do I accrue value for my organization? And so I think that's where it first starts. It's like you as an individual kind of take the reins as a choose your own adventure, if you will, in terms of your DAO contribution. There's no handbook or standardization when it comes to contributing in DAOs or in Web3. I was kind of lucky when it came to freelance. I was able to go on like YouTube and understand, what it really was meant to be a freelancer. What does an entrepreneur do? How do I succeed as an entrepreneur? There are no certain handbooks for that as well. And so, like I said before, there's this dependency on like, all right, well, I want to participate. I really like this idea of working in DAOs, but I don't know how I fit in. I'm not tech savvy. But I think that because we're so early, every community has the opportunity to kind of shape the way that contribution actually fits them, but also that standardization or manual of that organization shouldn't be DAO dependent. It should be collective based on the individuals as a contributor. So the idea of freedom in Web3 is definitely thrilling, right? Like I said before, not your keys, not your coin, the self-custodialship, this idea that you can enter a Discord and participate in any way that you'd like. But that's not how our original world works, right? We live in a world of hierarchical structures. Maybe pulling from my example, when I used to work in a particular environment, they were always telling me to stay in my lane. So for the first time when I worked in DAOs, or contributed to DAOs, if you will, nobody told you to stay in your lane. You can participate in any way that you wanted to. You can even listen in to meetings if you wanted to, if you were a little bit nosy like I was. Or you can add value and say, hey, I want to do this because I think it would be really great for the DAO, or submit a proposal, or participate in governance. So what we're doing is actually participating in ideas and activities that are quite new, but not new to the world, but maybe new to our experiences. And so those are some of the obstacles that, although we do see decentralization and trustlessness, the human-centric approach to this idea of sovereignty and a Web3 sovereign contributor is something that needs to be explored on a group level, but also as an individual, right? So those are things that are like asking yourself, like, why do I want to be part of this community? Who can I ask for help if I need any help? How do I add value? And so those things, really, the buck stops with you. And so when participating in Web3 as a DAO contributor or contributor in any sort of way, you have to ask yourself those questions as well. Because in order for us to actually be effective nodes in this beautiful ecosystem of effective coordination, we all have to be effective nodes within this ecosystem of coordination. So I think a lot of the narratives are around the technology, as I mentioned before, around these ideas of decentralization and coordination. But we also need to kind of remind ourselves that there are humans behind those avatars on the Discord. So building relationships with one another is actually very important. Having allies within my DAOs and that I can talk to about my struggles have actually helped me sustain working in them, also within the bear as well. So applying a human-centric approach to things is also very important as an individual, but also checking with yourself as well to see whether or not the environment that you're in is actually valuable for you to be in, whether it's mental or health or whether it's just good vibes for you. Because what we've also heard is that I wish our DAO would do this, or I wish that the ecosystem would provide this. But we are all individuals, and so if you're in an environment that might not serve you, or you don't add value or receive any value, then you also have the opportunity to leave. And it's on Discord, so you can really just close your computer on that end. So I just kind of want to close with a couple of things that I learned through my DAO experience. And so just that kind of helped me. So when I entered the DAO ecosystem, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, which in most cases to begin with was governance, but I obviously didn't start in governance because I needed to really see how I could add value to the organization. So what I did was actually leverage some of the skill sets that I had previously. And some of the things that I've noticed within contributors is because everything seems so techy, they don't actually think that they can bring their old experiences, whether professional or in life, into this ecosystem. But actually you can. You can leverage your previous experiences and skill sets within this ecosystem because the majority of the activities that we do in DAOs, majority of them are non-technical. So adding value to that will actually enhance not only your reputation and your social capital and the value that you bring to your organization, but it'll also add value to the organization as well, and then you'll actually be seen. Other things that I've noticed though too is identifying opportunities. So there are tons of things that you can do within a DAO, and you really just have to find the ones that you can take up on and claim ownership on and actually continue to do. Not every type of activity is the fun one, but as you continuously build and as you continuously collaborate with other people, it's really going to be a fun ride. Participation in governance. So as a, I guess, self-described gov nerd, I can understand how daunting it can be in participating in governance. But as a stakeholder within this organization, it's really important. So understanding kind of what the goals are within your organization, reading proposals, asking questions, because you are a part of a community, will allow you really to participate in ways through governance that you might not have been able to in your real life. What else? Proactiveness. Nobody's going to tell you what to do or how to do it. So it is really up to the individual to kind of put their hand up and claim ownership in what they're doing. And then more people would be willing to work with you, or you'll be able to build a reputation towards that. So that's actually like really, really important, especially in this particular environment. And celebrate your wins. So, you know, not many of us may have like suffered burnouts or disappointments when we are working or contributing to the DAO. But you know, celebrating your small wins will allow you as an individual to kind of celebrate that what you've accomplished in this particular new space as well. Because if you're happy, then you're able to continue and do work, but also add value to the vibes of your community. And so finally, within DAOs, they're all made of humans. So developing actual authentic relationships is really, really important, because out of it, you might actually make lifelong friends. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you for listening. I don't see any questions on the screen, but I was wondering if anybody had any questions. No? OK. Adrian. If I were to do something different, what would I do differently if I were to be a contributor? I think that the way that I entered contribution was trying to be as valuable as possible. So when I wanted to, do certain activities, I didn't really look at it from like a human-centric perspective, because I had come from a 9 to 5. I was looking at like, oh, I could do that job. That would be really effective. But I think the thing is that like I needed to kind of ride the wave and really understand the people that are participating within it, because being effective in a community sometimes doesn't really matter, right? It's also understanding how the culture is like. But I think that what I would have probably done prior to that is, rather than like, oh, I'm really interested in this DAO because what they're doing, and this is kind of how I could add value by doing these particular activities, I probably would have gone through like a more human-centric approach to things, like, do I like the vibes here? How are the people? What makes it fun? Because the first couple of months, like, I was in a lot of DAOs, And I got burnt out because I just thought that I was like, okay, we have to do all of this work to achieve all of these great things, but I never really asked myself as like whether or not I'd like to still do these things. Do I like being here? Can I leave? And then it became a weird situationship when I didn't leave like early enough. So those are some of the things that I would do to change. So somebody had asked, do you think better onboarding sessions would improve the way people can find where to contribute? I mean, the straight answer is yes. But I think that the most prior to onboarding, I think that DAOs or collectives, decentralized collectives, really need to ask themselves why. Like, why are they here? What do they want to achieve? And what type of members do they really want to accept within their community? And what sort of activities can those members do to add value and receive value as well? Because by setting up those kind of standards of like, this is who we are, and this is the why, and this is like how we can achieve it together, allows people not only a North Star at achieving things, but also allows themselves to see themselves where is most needed, and so that will actually allow the transition of, or the process of onboarding much, much easier. That's it, actually, so thank you so much.